So today we're going to be continuing to take a look at a scenario where civilization starts over. We're now on episode 71 of the series, and in the last episode we saw the official conclusion of World War IV with the coalition of the willing destroying the old empire and ending the false peace of World War IV. But if you guys do enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you're new. All the support is greatly appreciated as we're trying to get to 200,000 subscribers. By the time this video is out, we are probably at 190k, so we are in the final push. We are 10,000 away from 200,000, so let's try to get there. Of course, if you haven't already, make sure to join the new Discord server. This is the final video of Daily Upload Week Part 2, so thank you all so much for the support, and let's go ahead and jump straight into this video. So heading on over to our actual live map, the world looks a little bit different. The old empire has officially ceased to exist, as the coalition of the willing, which includes countries like India, China, and America, have put an end to the Mesopotamian Empire. Now, officially, the victors of World War IV, including India, Rome, and the fascist bloc in South America, can all sit down at a conference and discuss the new borders and order of the world. So let's start with that. The first order of business established in the Crimean peace treaties is the establishment of the Assembly of Nations. The Assembly of Nations will be this world's version of the United Nations, and an attempt to improve upon the Dutch Empire's failed version of the Organization of States, which after the capital of the Dutch team has been occupied, some new files will be found considering the Organization of States, and what they find within those files is concerning to say the least. But for now, the Assembly of Nations will be created, and it will be heavily pushed much further than the Organization of States, and the founding members of the Assembly of Nations are as this: America, China, India, Greece, Ireland, Mexico, Tibet, and South Africa. These founding members will then use their influence across other nations to get them to join the organization, and very quickly the Assembly of Nations will gain popularity, more so than the Organization of States ever saw. So here are the founding members of the AON on the map visualized. We might actually just call the AON the AN, but these are the founding members, and like I said, they're going to be using their influence to get a ton of other countries to join. So this is assumingly going past the World War IV peace treaty a little bit, looking ahead into the future just without the updated borders. Alright, and these are the first initial countries to join the AN. As you can see, North America, pretty much the entire continent has joined it, minus a few nations such as Crimea, the Central American country, and West Mexico. South America, only one nation has joined so far, and that is Southern Argentina. They are the only nation in South America that wasn't involved in World War IV. In Africa, it's just the founding members so far. In Europe, we have the Finland and then the Estonian and St. Petersburg countries joining. There's also Ireland and Greece who are founding members. And then finally in East Asia and Southeast Asia, you can see all of the nations that have initially joined. So here they all are. And now let's get to the fun part of this video, the actual borders. So the first treaty of Crimea established the AN. The second treaty of Crimea will focus on the borders of Europe. So once again, giving you guys a quick little refresh, this is what the post-World War IV map looks like with all the occupation zones. First, we're heading on over to the British Isles. So as we know, the Irish were one of the members who started and joined the coalition of democratic nations in World War IV, and in this peace treaty they will be getting full control over the British Isles, officially kicking the Dutch Empire off of Great Britain. This is also the first time in a very long time that the British Isles has seen this much unity. Next up, we have the release of Iceland, making it an official country for the first time in Wixo. Their capital city will be right here. And then next up, we're heading down over here to this part of Europe, more specifically France/Iberia. First of all, we will have the recreation of the nation of France, just without the claims that they had where the purple team has gained land. So they will be plot back onto the map, combining both communist and fascist France back together. But there's a little bit of an issue with the recreation of France, because Iberia, one of the victors in World War IV, feels as if they should have some of their historic lands back that France has taken from them. So the AN will consider Iberia's request, and considering the fact that France technically lost World War IV but also technically won World War IV, they're going to go ahead and listen to the Iberians, who are a democratic nation, whereas the French were filthy communist or filthy fascist. So Iberia is given their claims, just not all of them, because that would be a little bit overkill and the French would find that very unfair. So here are the new borders given to Iberia. This is kind of their war spoils. And next up, we're actually going to be talking about West Africa. Now, West Africa willingly left the war. They also shot a bunch of nukes into the Gold Team, preventing the launch of the Gold Team's nuclear barrage, which in essence might have saved the world and saved the lives of millions. The AN recognizes this, and they decide that West Africa will not be punished for World War IV. At least not a lot. They're still going to get some form of punishment, but just not as much belt as the rest of the fascist bloc is going to be getting soon. So what we have happening here in Iberia is the West Africans being forced to give up their claims over Iberia. The Northern Iberians Iberian team will reclaim this area of Portugal, which they once had. But interest in this land is shared by both the Iberians and the Dark Cyan team, who have grown to become not so much of fans of West Africa being on their peninsula. Now, of course, the Dark Cyan team had a government change. Their people overthrew their leader. He got the Mussolini treatment. But now, under a new democratic government, the Dark Cyan team will go ahead and take back all of southern Iberia. The West Africans will hold on to just a little bit of the tip over here, but nonetheless, this is what we have happening, and the West Africans are officially kicked out of Europe. The next border change that we have happening is actually something that happens against Norway. Now, in World War IV, the Norwegian country left the war after the leader was democratically voted out of office, and the people essentially voiced their opposition to the war. Now, an interesting thing that happened is that Norway never liberated Denmark from the Dutch, and this is something that didn't really sit well for all of the people living in Denmark. They held out their hope that the Norwegians would come and liberate their country, but it never happened. After being left under fascist control, the Danish people began growing tired of their former government and eventually established their own nation. And that is what we see here, the nation of Denmark. The Norwegians will not be opposed to the creation of this new country. The only thing that they ask is that they split this island where Copenhagen is, and the Danish agree. As for this area down here, it will actually be given back to the Dutch team who once ruled it before World War II. As for their capital city, it will be placed right up here in the north. Now comes the land loss for the Dutch Empire. They lost World War IV. After the fall of Ethiopia, the Dutch simply couldn't hold out anymore, and without any support from Brazil, who was taking control over all of South America, without the support from West Africa, who left the war, the Dutch simply collapsed. They were overwhelmed the entire time. They were able to hold out miraculously thanks to their allies, but once their allies were gone, the Dutch completely collapsed, and now they're going to be paying the price. First of all, the nation of Switzerland will be released. This very small nation was once occupied and then annexed by the Dutch Empire, but now it's back, and it sits on the northern border of Rome. But when the AN brings this thing back, they kind of want to make it a little bit bigger, a little bit more stable, and not the size of my thumb when I put my thumb up to the screen. So in an attempt to also bring power away from the Dutch Empire, they will go ahead and give away a few Dutch provinces to the Swiss country, and the nation will now look something like this. Next up will be the releasing of the dark blue country down over here. This was another country that was annexed by the Dutch, but they are released and they are now back. Oh yeah, we also see these guys come back, and they too will get a similar treatment to Switzerland. They will be given a large chunk of provinces away from the Dutch team in hopes of limiting the rise of another Dutch empire from ever happening again. So these guys will essentially double their country, if not a little bit more, and they will now look something like this. And now it's time for the war spoils. Now, Poland was just a member of the anti-coalition, the former ally of the old empire during their stand to survive. They ended up leaving that side. So now there's mixed reactions on what should happen with Poland. Should they be given land or should they not be given land due to their, disobedience against the democratic nations? Eventually, a decision will be made and Poland will be allowed to annex a little bit of land from the Dutch. So they will be annexing all of this land as well as these provinces here, and Poland has itself a little bit of an upgrade. Now, as for the Romans, they will be annexing these two large areas from the Dutch, so they'll get that and that. Rome is now looking a lot larger and a lot more powerful. Now, I do want to say all of the nations that have been created thus far, so Denmark, these guys, Switzerland, France, they're all democratic nations. And as you notice, I've cut off a large portion of the Dutch country over here, and this is going to be a new nation. And these guys are, I guess, basically Germany, but not really Germany because these aren't real life countries. But their capital city will be right in the center of their country. And that really does it for the partitioning of the Dutch. They will be allowed to keep their core provinces, but as for their government, it will be flipped into a democratic one, officially making this the new ideological map of Western Europe. And this is just straight up the map of Western / Central Europe. So let's go ahead and go on over to Eastern Europe and do the peace deals over here. As another refresher, this is what the occupation zones look like, and we're going to be starting first with the Farmers Union. So with the Farmers Union, they will be losing land, but honestly not too much. They did help the democratic nations win World War IV, then there was that little betrayal thing that happened with the old empire, and then they got absolutely destroyed. But still, nonetheless, they technically helped out with the initial World War IV fight against the fascists, so they aren't hit too hard by this peace treaty. Crimea will take this land over here, which kind of alludes to what's happening next. Oh, also we see the release of a new country up in the northeast. We're going to talk more about this guy here in a second, and that second is now because we're heading on over to the HRE, where there's going to be a lot of changes, to be honest. First of all, you know that new country I was just talking about? Well, they're going to be taking a big old chunk out of Russia, and the rest of the blue team will be entirely annexed by the gold team. A pretty big moment for them as they gain a ton of historical land back. historical land, I mean new land. And then we head on up to this fascist nation here. They will be giving this land on over to this brown team. And as for the rest of this land, it will be united with this pink team and be given a democratic government. So not really too big of a punishment for the green team here. I'm sure Poland isn't too happy with that. Oh, and of course, speaking of Poland, they will actually not be receiving any land from the green team, and this is part of their punishment for their participation in the anti-coalition. So they were only allowed to take land from the Dutch team, and Poland probably is okay with this. You know, it's not the end of the world. They're letting you live, so you should take that and run with it. Now on to the two communist nations over here. These guys fought in World War IV, but then they joined the anti-coalition and then they lost. So first of all, the pink team will be annexing all historic lands that they once had, and you can really see how the pink team has actually started to move east, interestingly enough. This is what they look like now, and this outline here is what they used to look like. But like I said, they will be getting their historical lands back, and this is the updated pink team. Now I did just create a new province, which will then be given on over to the teal team here, and that is their reward for participating in the coalition. Not much, but still, I guess, a little bit. Then as for the yellow team, they will be allowed to continue to exist, as well as the northern gray team, just severely weakened, and with a new democratic government as seen by this new map of Eastern Europe's ideologies here. Also worth mentioning that the pink team does have a new democratic government now. As we saw in World War IV, it was overthrown, and they installed a democracy in this thing, which could have implications down here in Central Asia, especially with some remaining dictatorships across this belt. But yeah, officially, here is our new map of Europe post-World War IV. I hope I didn't miss anything, because if I did, that'd be really embarrassing. But now we're going to head down to South America, actually, where we will be drawing the new borders of this continent. Now, as you can see, this was a complete fascist victory. All of the nations here are now fascist, minus the southern one. And this is the third treaty of the Crimea Conference. Now, unfortunately for Peru here, they are not going to be let off easy. First of all, the yellow team will be annexing the southern part of their country, and then Brazil is going to come in and eat up the rest. And then to make things even worse, a new country will be set up by the Brazilians. This will be a fascist nation created by Brazil, and the pink team will be reduced just to their coastal area. And then as for the green team over here, unfortunately, they will be getting partitioned by the fascist victors of South America, so their country will cease to exist, and these countries will all gain land like this. And then as for the red team over here, they will still exist, but Brazil will be taking the northern part of them, and then the brown team will be taking these three areas, a lot of land, but like I said, they will still exist, and they will be given a democratic government. Finally, as for the red country down here, its former allies will do a very good job at lobbying for its existence. The yellow team will only take a little bit of the north, and they will still be allowed to exist as a communist nation as well. So here is our updated ideological map of South America, and without it, this is what it's looking like. So these are the new countries, and this is what South America looks like post World War IV. We're now going to head quickly on over to Oceania, where there is just a quick little change. Remember, in World War IV, this area agreed to have a ceasefire, and then they would eventually work out a peace deal. So this is the fourth treaty of the peace treaties of Crimea. First of all, the yellow team will be annexing these provinces away from the red team, but they will still be allowed to keep this one. And then simply enough, fascist Australia will be annexing all of northern blue Australia. This could be a pretty strategic point, so they take it. And now Australia is looking something like this. No ideological shifts over here. This all stays the same. And now finally, we can go ahead and get ourselves down to Africa. Yes, I am saving the best for last. But as for Africa, this will be pretty interesting because during the course of World War IV, a lot of countries ended up leaving the war. Most notably, these two fascist nations down here, and then West Africa left as well. Like I said earlier, the only punishment West Africa will really get is them losing control of their claims in Iberia, and then they will also get financial and economical sanctions, and be forced to pay reparations to the victors of World War IV. They will not be spitting out any land, and therefore their borders will not change, but the same cannot be said for this area of Africa, which saw the most death and destruction out of any place in the world. Now, as we remember, Libya and the purple team surrendered, and the gold team got nuked into oblivion. So the first order of business is the re-establishment of all of Tanzania. So they will now look something like this once again. And then what we have happening is something like this. So Tanzania is restored to their old historic lands, but so is the red team. They get all of their land that Ethiopia took from them previously. I did a lot of changes to the province map here. Some of the provinces in this area suck, but I think it's better now, a little bit, at least the main borders are. But anyway, next up we have the release of this country here. The former old empire ally makes its reappearance. We also see the return of Egypt, and then we see both of these nations get a healthy amount of land from the countries which have done them wrong in the past. So Egypt will get a healthy chunk of land from the purple team and Libya, and then the Sudanese country will get a good chunk of land from the gold team as well as the purple team, and it will look something like this. And then finally, the purple team will be split into two, with the purple country now closely resembling the former old Imperial puppet, and the blue team being a new country. Looking at the ideology map right here, we can see that this is what these three new countries are looking like. We see that the government of the purple team has been shifted over to democracy. Now, as for Libya, they actually kind of get off pretty easily. They did surrender, so they aren't punished as bad as some of the other countries are going to be or have been. But they are forced to spit out this nation up here, and ideologically, they are both given democratic governments. Now, all right, so let's head on down to this area. This is going to be interesting because the gold team, as we know, has been turned into a nuclear wasteland, first of all, but also is completely occupied. And also there's the remnants of a very bad genocide. What is that? Oh wow, that's actually like an official thing too. It's a small community within the red team. That's really cool. But like I was saying, this area has been completely, genocided by the gold team. Actually, the entirety of this portion of Africa has experienced that, unfortunately. But that makes it kind of difficult at the peace treaty because what are we supposed to do with this nuclear wasteland that also has hundreds, if not thousands, of mass grave sites and, just a bunch of really bad things going on? This is what we're going to do. First of all, we're making a brand new country over here, the dark blue team, which I'm probably going to change into more of that kind of color team. Then they're going to topple the fascist government in the green team and of course give them a democratic government along with the new purple team. But there is a major issue with the gold team, and that is the fact that there isn't really any kind of ethno-states as there used to be. We're going a little bit back in time here, but I wanted to show you the religion map, or the old religion map of this area. As you can see, there has indeed been a lot of genocide. But previously, there were countries here that were kind of almost defined by their religion, and that is why we kind of saw these wacky borders. But now, present day wise, those religions and ethnicities are completely gone, and there is no longer like a nation. The nation has been completely destroyed. There's only one people, and that's super unfortunate, but it also means that you can't bring those countries back because they're gone. Their people are gone. So what the AN is going to do with Ethiopia is that they will be sending in a combined military force to completely occupy the country. Essentially, the AN takes control over Ethiopia. The gold team ceases to exist. Its government officials are likely tried and executed, or tried and imprisoned for life. There are some government members that are missing, some which are not found, some which who have fled. But what they do know is that their leader is gone. He's perished, and the AN will be occupying and running this thing for the next few years. Here's the new ideology map of Africa. As you can see, a lot less fascist and a lot more democracy. But now finally, what you've been waiting for most likely is the fate of Mesopotamia. What will happen to the once great old empire, who at the end of World War IV faced a coalition of the willing and saw ultimate defeat? Well, first of all, we have both of these countries getting all of their land back. Second of all, the pink team will be spat back out. Remember, these guys were invaded and annexed by the blue team. And now we get to the interesting part, the part you've been waiting for. Will the old empire be allowed to exist, or will it remain fragmented as you see here? Let's find out. I want to give you guys a little bit of insight into what the leaders of the AN are thinking of right now when considering the fate of the old empire. First of all, I want you all to realize that the people of Mesopotamia are terrified of saying the words old empire. That was, of course, until it actually formed and the nation was truly back. The old empire, the idea of it was so taboo amongst the nations of the world, the people of Mesopotamia were scared to even say its name. Ultimately, the responsibility of nuclear war was put on the old empire specifically for their attack on China, which is a narrative that the East Asian nation has created. China has influenced nations across the world to believe the old empire to be responsible for the nuclear war that broke out in World War III. Now, as we all know, that isn't entirely what happened. Russia launched a series of nukes towards the old empire, and the old empire responded. That's how the nuclear war truly started. But then we had the preemptive strikes that the old empire did on China. China wasn't a big fan of that. And so now they're pushing the narrative that the old empire is the one who is truly responsible for the start of nuclear war in World War III. And that is why so many people in Mesopotamia are scared to say old empire. Now, another thing we have to talk about is India. India allowed for the red team to gain its independence. They gave them independence, and then the protests turned into riots, and the riots turned into rebellion, and the entirety of the red team was able to break away from its occupiers, being Norway, the Dutch team, China, and India. India kind of knew that this would happen. They knew that the red team would probably start to, snowball into a full-on rebellion and break away, in which case it did. But what India didn't know would happen is the formation of the old empire. Like I said before, the only countries that knew about the old empire's return were the actual Mesopotamian countries themselves. It was a very secretive operation, and surprisingly, no one ever found out about it. But when the old empire formed, India was not too happy about that. They specifically told the red team that, we're giving you independence, independence. But remember, the Treaty of World War III prevents you from forming any kind of mass unitarian empire with the people of Mesopotamia. If you do that, you are breaking the treaty and you could see consequence. They said could, not will. Now, why were countries like China and America going in and forming this coalition of the willing against the old empire? They easily got the support of India to join this coalition, and from there, a lot of the other democratic major powers across the world, like Ireland, Greece, South Africa, they joined in as well because they wanted to make sure that the Mesopotamian order was dead. They do not want the return of the Mesopotamian order, aka the old empire. They do not want the order, the power in the world, to be centralized in Mesopotamia. They want it gone out of that area. And so the coalition of the willing became into existence and the old empire fell. But also, these nations aren't stupid. The AN knows that the Mesopotamian people are very united. They know about the benefits of keeping everyone together. They know how it prevented horrible things from happening. And of course, they know that no matter how hard you try to suppress these people, they will always tend to fight back against you. So with that in mind, the AN will be fair to the old empire. They will not allow for the old empire to exist, but they will allow for the nations that formed it to continue to thrive together. And what do I mean by that? I mean that the red team and the blue team will face no occupation, and they are allowed to be sovereign, but separate. All nations that were in the old empire are given the choice. You can join the red team or the blue team. If you want to keep that unity amongst your people, you are allowed to consolidate into either the red team or the blue team. And as you can see, many countries took that opportunity and did so. Now, the purple team's a little bit different. They were a country that wasn't involved in the old empire. They were heavily occupied by them. But the people here are kind of in an interesting state. They're a little bit scarred from their fascist rule, as you see, and they aren't really ready to unite with either the red team or the blue team, so they will be refraining from doing so. As for the Palestinian country, they chose to go ahead and keep their sovereignty. The pink team broke away out of the blue team, and that's an interesting thing we're gonna have to talk about here in a second. Caucasia chose sovereignty, and then these two nations over here, they never joined the old empire, but they also chose sovereignty. Now, why did they choose sovereignty? That's because they kind of developed away from Mesopotamia. These aren't necessarily like the core areas and provinces of the old empire. This is land that they had, conquested and taken over time. They did rule over this land for a very long time, yes, but individuality developed here, and then eventually these guys want their sovereignty, so they chose to stay out of the old empire temp union when it came back. Now, the thing with Caucasia, though, it's not exactly the same because these guys were a part of the old empire a little bit more than the Anatolian countries were, but simply the Caucasians just want their own nation. They want to also enjoy close relations with the red and blue teams. Maybe that means alliances, maybe that means economical alliances, but they would like to keep their own nation to prevent, them ever getting invaded again. They believe that their people are safer under one nation that's in an alliance with a stronger country, and that's what they plan on doing. These two countries down here are very anti-old Empyrean now. I think we all know why. History says why. These guys were invaded and annexed by the old empire. They don't want to go back. And the pink team was annexed and invaded by the blue team. Now, let's talk about that. Going back in time a little bit, we can see that the blue team was a country that invaded and annexed both the pink and yellow teams, and this is going to be a little bit of a lore drop. So back in this time period, I don't know what exact episode this is from, maybe 58. The green team's still here, so yeah, I think 58. But back in this time, the blue team started to create a plan. They were in contact with and working with the leader of the old empire that we saw rise up in World War IV, who was located in Cyprus during this episode, but they started to make plans about recreating the old empire. Slowly but surely, the blue team started to infiltrate these other countries and use their agents to get in contact with the higher up government. This was a very secretive and shady operation. Oftentimes, it was just the representative from the blue team, or the spy I should say, who snuck in and got one-on-one time with the leaders of each of these countries. That means they got past the guard of the leader, they got past the military, any kind of defense forces, they got past all of that. It was a very serious operation. But what happened is that these agents went to each and every single one of the former old empire countries and asked their governments, do you want to, when the time comes, reform the old empire and ensure the safety of our people? This was at a time where the old empire was very taboo, and the pink team and the yellow team both said no, and therefore the blue team's military went in and started an operation to annex both of these countries to get them out of the way of the old empire. Otherwise, it would have been a very disunited empire. The blue team would have been a part of the old empire, but it would have been separated and on its own down here, while the rest of it was up here. So the blue team invaded both of these countries. They were obviously very capable enough to do so. And the leaders of these two countries never said anything, and it's most likely because they were paid off after the invasion was over. As for the other countries, every single one of their leaders said yes, they wanted to reform the old empire. And the rest of it, you guys already know. These three countries up here, they did say no though. They had already started to develop their own sovereignty before World War IV happened. Anyway, here is the new ideology map of Mesopotamia, and then here is the new overall map. And yeah, that is going to do it for our peace treaty for World War IV, the War of Absolutes. I hope you guys did enjoy World War IV. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you all enjoyed all the little bits of lore that have been hidden throughout this video. If I missed anything or if I forgot to draw in a new border, let me know in the comments below. If I did miss anything, then it's probably not going to be updated until the episode after next because I'm going on vacation next week. And I have to pre-record next Saturday's video as well as next Wednesday's, and then Monday's video is unfortunately going to be a Wixo movie video, but whatever. I do also want to say that if you didn't show up to the live stream last Monday, then you missed out because we have a few new maps here. I will have to go on my own and update both of these maps, but if you don't know what these are, then you can ask someone in the comments and I'm sure they'll be able to tell you. That's my punishment. I'm not telling you because you didn't show up to the stream. You should have showed up to the stream. We also added in a ton more major cities. If I just go ahead and get rid of the map, you can see that there is now like a definitive outline of the world map. It's kind of hard to see, but you can see like India right here, China, Korea, Japan over here. You can see the Americas, Europe. I mean, this is a really cool map. But anyway, once again, thank you all so much for watching this episode of What If Civilization Started Over. And I will see you all in the next episode, which is the first episode of the Age of Modernization. And of course, thank you to all our super fans. This includes Serminator, IC Static FN, CTG on YT, Ixco, Euroball, Augusto, A Norwegian, RS, Gail Martinez, America and Canada and UK, Zaylance, the leader of the AZO, Freezioi, Laser Taze, Pablo Sigma Cat, Death Strider X, Hammer Toad 45, and of course, DW Cool Dude. Once again, thank you guys.